Refresh. Refresh.
Refresh.
There we go. We're live.
Awesome.
Yes. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Crucious Media podcast. We decided to title this one in favor of one article, which we should probably list in the comments below somewhere. I was
Yes.
thinking we should actually list the links. Anywho, we're calling this one Tablets Take Over the World
Mhm.
because this article is recommending that tablets can take over everything or take over every single job that exists. And here you have both game creators being like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, just from the power behind a full-blown computer versus a small chip
Yes.
is very different.
Not to mention, you're talking about the architecture as well, but that's that's a whole topic for another day.
Mhm.
Um, Hang on one second. Just typing a message on my Discord.
Oh, good. Okay, so kind of going into this subject a little more. The writer was talking about the iPad Mini 6 came out with 5G data functionality, which makes it more like a phone than any other tablet sort of idea.
Yeah.
And it's talking about the new A15 Bionic system chip, which is the processor, which is very similar to the iPhone 13, or I believe so. I haven't looked into the specs all too much. They talk how it's going to be a great battery life and all this fun stuff. Um, and pretty much everything that he goes into more or less talks about more of the regular business person, the guy who needs to write
Yeah.
documents and files and more or less because they can do FaceTime, iMessage, Facebook, Google Meet, whatever you want.
I
Um,
kind of I kind of just skimmed over it.
it
There was another article that I wanted to toss, but I forgot to toss the link.
okay.
And they were talking about the aspect of gaming on it.
Oh really?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, gaming, I can kind of see for certain games,
Hmm.
but not for all games.
Yeah. Which um is very true. And
Yeah.
I mean, like, yes, you can get the mobile applications that work marvelously on tablets or phones or something like that. But I'm like, okay, yeah, you take PUBG as the mobile version, but it's nothing like the computer version or
Yeah.
Call of Duty or stuff like that. And I think that's where people really are like, oh look, this one that was originally on the PC or Xbox or PS, whichever
Well,
console.
speaking of games that are coming to mobile, Digital Extremes is going to be porting Warframe to mobile. And I'm kind of interested on how that's going to work.
Okay. I mean, though, aren't those the same guys that have done that port to the Switch, or was that somebody else?
Technically speaking, yes, it was.
So, I mean, going to like a Switch and then taking a few years to go to like the phones or tablets or something like that, it can make a little bit of sense that they're like, okay, we're just gonna push it a little farther. Um, like what?
Well, the one thing that I do have to say about DE is, unlike a lot of companies, they will actually take the time to beta test for the
Hmm.
most part. They have had a couple issues with, certain things happening on the Switch, and then there's also the fact that they want to completely open the environment,
Yep.
so have crossplay. But one of the things that they were struggling with is syncing up updates. So,
Hmm.
for example, the Switch, PS4, PC, Xbox, and so on and so forth all get the updates at the same time.
Yep.
That's now done.
Yep.
So updates roll out on all platforms at the same time. The next
Okay.
issue is trying to deal with each console specific bug.
Okay.
and that's going to be a bit more harder because you can't just the Xbox and PlayStation kind of work very similarly as they are, x86 built systems.
Yep.
There's a couple different fundamentals between them, but they're quite similar in many ways.
Yeah, it's the at the
Yeah.
core of what's running, it's the same.
hmm
Which makes
Versus you look
sense.
at let's say a mobile phone or Nintendo Switch, that brings a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you're running a completely different system. Like the Switch uses an ARM-based processor.
Yeah,
So do
it's an
phones.
ARM based, but it does kind of run very similarly to an x86.
Yeah.
So there is some simple fundamentals that you can do.
Yeah.
Bringing it to a phone, though,
It's gonna
you
be
see, my
interesting.
phone is very different from yours.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
There's
like my
within
phone actually features a GPU.
yeah, and there's multiple generations,
Yeah.
and that's I think really gonna hinder the development. I think unless they can figure out a way to I don't know, like just even just playing like simple games like drains my battery alone. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
with uh with a
Like one game.
game like Warframe, it would just be ridiculous.
Well, yeah. Game Dev Studio can run solid for 3 hours,
Hmm.
and that's a 2D. That's a 2D game.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm
That's on
interested.
my phone in a full. Yeah.
I'm interested to see. I mean, going back to the topic of are tablets gonna replace it? I don't think so.
I don't think so
Um,
either.
going.
See, the biggest issue I have with tablets, and people bring this up with the Switch, is the lack of controls, the
Hmm.
lack of an actual physical controller. You can't take that away from any sort of gamer, whether you're used to a mouse and keyboard, an N64 controller, or a GameCube controller. Sorry, I'm naming a bunch of Nintendo products. Uh, PlayStation controller, an Xbox controller, or Sega.
Yep.
Incoming call.
Another incoming call from my other buddy.
ah,
That's fine.
but anyways, you can't just take those away from a gamer
Yep.
and then expect touchscreens to work for that. It just doesn't. It doesn't doesn't have the same feel.
Hmm.
Like part of what makes video games fun is having that tactile feel of the buttons. And having the button layout known so well that you don't even have to look at the keys. You just know, okay, I have to reach this way to do this thing, and here I do this.
Yep.
Like it's just something that a touchpad I don't think will ever
Well,
truly work.
I mean, you have a bunch of those computers that have the touch screens, and I mean,
Yes.
you look at the Apple iPad Pro or whatever that comes with a keyboard.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what they're going off of here. It's like, yes, tablets, you can have a keyboard. In a lot of instances, you can connect a controller if you really want to game off of it. But going to replacing everything, like you were saying at first, I don't think it's ever going to be.
I don't think that's ever going to be a thing.
Well, it's like you take a look at I have the Threadripper processor. No battery is ever going to run that Threadripper processor for any length of amount of time. It's, you know what I mean? Just in just sheer practice of building a game or stuff like that, it's not going to practice. If you want a game on a tablet, so be it. I mean, if you so want to stoop to that level, so be it. It's like you can connect controllers, you can connect keyboards, you can do whatever you want with a tablet, really. Just
Yeah.
for replacing everything, it comes down to it's not going to happen.
Well, it
Not.
makes me think. It makes me think of that one video by Viva La Dirt League, where so the concept is that they work in a tech shop, and then there's this customer that walks in, and he wants to pick up a gaming computer.
Hmm.
So they're showing him a bunch of Windows computers, and he's like, "No, I don't like it."
Yeah.
Well, then what do you want? When I think gaming, I think Mac.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah,
I remember that one. I
just
always just
like
like face palm so hard whenever I see that. Like it's ridiculous.
I mean, to be fair, back in the day, there used to be some really good Apple games,
Yep.
specifically made for the Apple II, but that was a long time ago.
Yep. I mean, like I personally never think of going for a tablet for gaming. I mean, the one article that you did link, the title is "Why We Don't Need Laptops or Phones Anymore."
Yeah,
And laptops and phones are easily replaced by current tablets. We can say more portable, just as easy to use.
yeah.
Are they going to replace everything? Not likely.
Why do you keep signing me off, Google?
Sign them off. Sign them off. Keep signing them off. Okay, so one of the other ones that I was kind of interested in was the solid state batteries we were started talking about earlier.
Yes. So solid state batteries are kind of an interesting thing. So what they basically are, at least based off of my understanding, there might have been some improvements, but they're basically microchipped batteries that are very, very close to each other.
Hmm. I'm kind of thinking that they're probably close to a capacitor in a sense.
They basically are.
Like
Ay, ay, ay.
like obviously the
Quit.
Google's having
Yeah,
issues.
Google keeps on signing me off. It's like, put another password, put another password. Well, then I have to sign in on every.
Bloody
Great.
account.
Yeah.
Great.
So
So
yeah, I don't have the dock anymore. Cool.
um yeah, that's sort of what it looks like they're doing is they're using a similar technology to what a capacitor does. Is it stores electricity and then when it needs the electricity, it's like, here you go, but it normally
Yeah.
dumps it all at once.
Yes.
And that's how I watch a lot of videos where it's like people are blowing up so many amp fuses. That's how they do it. When they charge them for like a few days, they're like, "Yeah, we have this many freaking volts in here," and then it goes boom. It's hilarious. It's great. It's probably
How
very.
many fucking verification codes do I need to enter?
I don't know. I don't know why you're having this many issues.
Yeah, I know. I don't have a clue either. It's just like, yeah, so we're gonna sign you off. Why?
Yes, this one is interesting. A lot of stuff that I don't actually know, but could it's something that I'm gonna have to keep an eye on for sure. Um, in the future.
Okay, there we go. Set up a new password. Happy now, Google?
No, Google's never happy.
Yes, I know Google's never happy. Alright, sorry about that, guys. Long story short, my account just simply decided to sign out randomly,
Hmm.
which anonymous Kraken. Okay. So, anyways, so what a high state, how solid state battery is like you explained, it is basically a bunch of capacitors on a board.
Yep.
And the thing is that when they request power, they basically send all of it at once.
Yep.
So in theory, this is good for areas that you need a lot of power all at once. So like
Hmm.
starting a vehicle, this
Yep.
is a good choice for a solid state battery.
Yep.
Or as Scotty Kilmer has used in the past for batteries in relation to starting a motorcycle,
Yep.
where the high amount of power is really required
Yep.
because they take almost no time to charge, but they also
Give out.
depreciate a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like technically that's what a car battery does. But when you're looking at something like, a driving application, I'm not just talking about starting your vehicle, but actually using that continually to power your vehicle. That's a little different. As we need something that depreciates its power over time, as
Hmm.
opposed to just simply,
All at once.
10,000 amps just all at once. Because that's going to fry whatever engine you have put onto it. There's one YouTuber that demonstrated this with, I think it was just like 100. Yeah, it was just like a solid state battery with 100 volts or something like that. I'll see if I can find the link.
Hmm.
But yeah, he fried the top Tesla motor in 2 seconds.
Jesus Christ. That doesn't surprise me.
Daddy.
Doesn't
Okay.
surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like I'm just clicking on a few different articles. It looks like they're using an iron sulfate cathodes, which are have been focused on the area at
Yeah.
the solid state power.
Like the good news about it is based off of how they. Yes, we are nerds.
Yes, this is what we do for fun. Um, but yeah, so this article is saying the solid state batteries provides faster charging, better safety, lower costs, higher
Yeah.
range.
Well, another benefit to solid state batteries is the factor of them not requiring cobalt,
Mm-hmm. It's
because
true.
a lot of people don't really realize the issue with lithium polymer batteries.
Yep.
Everybody says, "Oh, well, it's lithium." I actually beg to differ,
Yep.
because you look at the world's lithium supply, most of it comes from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know one thing about Australia rules with safety, they're probably number one.
Yep.
So I have no problems with lithium.
Mm-hmm.
It's the other application in that particular situation that is really, really big,
Yes.
and that is cobalt.
Yep.
Cobalt, however, comes from Africa,
Yep.
and the biggest issue is first off, the the blood wars that are going on
Mm-hmm.
between drug lords, militaristic leaders. Like if you think what's happening in China is bad, keep in mind China is kind of all over the news, so
Yep.
we know what's actually happening. Whether
Yep.
we like it or not, China is kind of all over the news, and they're still technically part of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Africa, most people haven't even seen a window.
Yep. Oh,
Like you're
absolutely.
talking about a window basically being an open, like a hole in your wall,
Yep.
basically, is what you'd call a window. So let alone a computer.
Mm-hmm.
So most now I'm not trying to say all Africans are not tech savvy or anything like that, because you look at South Africa where they don't actually have that much um, cobalt come from that region.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly enough, they're actually pretty sophisticated.
Yep.
But it's just the factor most about nine about 70% of the world's cobalt population actually comes from the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
Where the sad fact of reality is there's blood wars going on a daily basis.
Yep.
And, kids as young as 6 years old are actually being forced to work in the mines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's true. It's 100% true there.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm curious about the weight factor
Well,
on solid
the
state.
the weight factor is actually very minimal.
Hmm. So very would it
Cuz
be very similar then, would you say, to lithium in terms of
um I would actually say it's about half the weight.
really? That would be awesome.
Cuz going off of my scooter,
Uh-huh.
I haven't actually picked up a lithium polymer battery cuz I can't find one for a decent price.
They're pretty hefty, I would assume.
Yeah. But my lead acid battery weighs, I think, just over 20 pounds actually. No,
Hmm.
not 20 pounds. 12 or something like that.
Yep.
and the solid state battery weighs just over a pound.
Yep.
But the issue that I have with a solid state is the factor of, I plug it in, I charge it, and then I go to start my scooter, it's instantly drained.
Yep.
And the issue is that, let's say I go for a short drive, that's not going to give it enough power to charge it.
Mm-hmm.
So I try and start it again, and it's not going to work on the solid state.
Yep.
The lead acid, on the other hand, I can actually, start it a couple times, just basically do a lap around my parents'
Yep.
place, and be perfectly fine,
Yep.
which I can do in about 5 or so minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So like that's gonna be very interesting to actually see them
yeah.
like go through with that. There's a lot of articles that looks like it's coming out like recently on the
Well, I
subject.
know
So
Toyota,
hopefully,
because they've been kind of forced into the
yep,
the industry. The Japanese government is making a lot of forces to force a lot of companies going green,
yep,
and I kind of agree with what Toyota has said. The fact you're going to be first off requiring companies to put a lot of retooling into their industry.
mm-hmm,
We've been doing a lot of gasoline vehicles over the years, a lot of diesel vehicles. Our tools especially made for those.
yep,
So we're gonna have to take a lot of these factories, spend lots of money on something that may or may not pay off.
mm-hmm,
And you're also going to be, changing an entire industry,
yep,
putting an entire industry out of work.
mm-hmm,
Like you're talking about all the global mechanics have to go back for reschooling,
yep.
which requires
True.
people to know how to work on it, which then requires a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm,
Like you buy a bidirectional scan tool, for example, from let's say Snap-on, Mac, Launch, Autel.
mm-hmm,
Like you pay $9,000, it'll give you everything you need to work on gasoline and diesel vehicles.
yep,
Legally speaking, under the eyes of the law right now as it stands, they don't have to give you any information on any electronic or hybrid vehicles.
mm-hmm.
So this creates an issue in the repair industry when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
So that means if you have a hybrid problem with your vehicle or a battery problem, you can't just go to Cal Tire, for example, and get it fixed.
Yeah,
You have to go to the dealer,
yep.
and you have to get it done on their time frame, which can be quite a long time.
Especially when it's mostly electric. We all know what electric does. It's ridiculous. I don't want to work on electric vehicles.
Well, the main other thing that I have with electric vehicles is take, for example, one instance that happened in the States. I don't remember which state it was. But so, because of the sheer mass of the battery and the
Mm-hmm.
sheer size, Teslas actually have to run coolant through the batteries to keep the cells very cool while they're actually in operation.
Hmm.
Because if they don't, that's a potential fire hazard. Plus, also in charging.
Interesting.
So, kind of like how you have coolant running in your gasoline car, there's also coolant running inside the actual Tesla
Yep.
as well. Now, according to Tesla, if a certain nozzle breaks on the battery casing, you can't fix the nozzle. You have to replace the entire battery,
Hmm.
which means um, the piece that there's. So long story short, guy took it over to the dealer. They wanted $55,000.
Yep.
His car at that point in time is worth 75. He took it over to a mechanic shop that they decided to try and fix it. They're like, we've never worked on any electric vehicles. We'll do our best. We can't guarantee it to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what they did, they built a custom connection for the coolant hose out of metal instead of plastic, and they kind of JB welded it around,
Okay.
and it's been holding like now for 7 months.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not to mention, unlike the original design, because this was all done because of a speed bump that he went over.
Hmm.
So the original design, you go over a speed bump, this coolant hose basically, or coolant connection to the battery, has a chance of breaking because it's made out of solid, non-flexible material
Hmm.
to try and reduce weight. I think it's ABS plastic actually.
Interesting.
Like it's not super strong really. So with the coolant hose that actually goes into the actual front of the vehicle to the radiator fans and whatnot,
Yep.
they decided to use something that has been tried and true in the auto industry. Actual rubber hoses
Yep.
instead of rigid ABS plastic.
Yep. I mean, especially when you're going from a frame to a movable part, which is an engine.
Yeah. Like, I mean, in this case, you're looking at a radiator fan to a battery pack, but still basic, same principle.
Yep.
Especially when you're going over shocks and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Your car moves quite a lot.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, obviously shocks
Yeah.
lessen the blow, but still they move a lot.
Well,
Um.
one thing that I'm amazed that most people don't know is how much brunt of the force your tires actually take out of a or an initial impact of a vehicle.
It's true. Very, very true. It's why you can
Like
only.
it's a true fact that your tires take about 80% of that initial shock.
Yep. And that's why you have to inflate your tires to a specific pressure
Hmm.
set to the vehicle, set to the manufacturer's recommended spec.
Like generally speaking, I recommend as a mechanic apprentice to during the winter time or colder season, you take what your manufacturer recommends on the door. So let's say a Dodge Grand Caravan is 36 psi,
Hmm.
and you inflate it an extra 3 psi.
Which
That
makes
way you have some range to colder temperatures.
Yep, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Going back to the batteries thing, I found an article posted just last week saying that this one company is working on 3D printing the solid state batteries, and
that could be kind of cool.
that they 3D printed one that has a 3 amp hour battery that has the capacity of three AAA batteries.
Hmm.
Very interesting. I mean, it's a start for sure,
It is definitely a start.
and it's something that like I said, I'm gonna keep my eye on
Yeah.
because that is really cool.
Well, the
And
only thing, like I said, that I always had an issue with solid state batteries is it's basically a capacitor.
yep.
So you enter in a given amount and then it unleashes instantly.
Hmm.
So you're really going to have to work on the reduction and the management system, which I
Yeah.
think is going to be the biggest hurdle,
I
really,
mean,
when you
it
think about it.
sounds like they're doing it.
Well, and like I mentioned earlier, you do have Toyota on the job, so
And they just did point.
honestly, I'm pretty sure they're gonna figure it out.
They'll somebody is gonna figure
Yeah,
something out. I mean, like you were saying, Toyota, they did just put $13.9 billion into the solid state project.
yeah.
So that's huge when
And
it
by the
comes
way, I
to.
should also mention Subaru is helping out Toyota.
Doesn't surprise me. They've
Yeah,
been in the same boat ever since Toyota bought stocks from them.
yeah.
Um, yes,
Not to mention also Mazda's in there as well.
it's a name you don't really hear very often anymore. They don't seem to be too much into the. I mean, they're obviously in the car industry, but it's not like.
Well, Mazda is focusing more on trying to make the most efficient gas engine,
Yeah,
which I really love their innovations.
oh, absolutely, and I know
Like
somebody.
their Skyactiv X, I'm actually pretty impressed.
Oh, really?
Like on the highway, it can actually run with absolutely no spark.
Oh, that's cool.
It's complete compression ignition on a gasoline vehicle,
Yeah, that's really good.
and it gets incredible gas mileage.
Yeah.
Like whether you'll actually believe the thing that it says on the odometer, or whether you'll take my word for it,
Yep.
like it's insanely good.
Oh, that's
I have a
awesome.
friend that drove to Lethbridge and back, and it's like I only burned through. I think it was just over 70. 70 liters of gas or something like that the
Yep.
entire trip.
Yeah, it's
Like
true.
that's really good for a vehicle pulling a trailer.
Yep. It's and that's another one of those things that the companies kind of have to go and weigh back and forth is okay, do I focus all my time and energy on EV vehicles that only make up 5 to 10% of my profit margins in a given year, or do I focus on getting more efficient gas mileage and in the end, like, that takes up 95% of my sales? And you see the you see the thing for
Yeah.
trying to save the gas mileage. It's
Well,
okay. Where do we want to spend the money,
I
right?
think another thing that goes into it is not just the companies investing, but you also have to think about, let's say everybody that drives a gasoline vehicle
Yep.
was starting tomorrow going to be driving an electric vehicle.
Well, the we don't, first off, we don't have the infrastructure for that.
Yes,
Nowhere
I
has the
agree.
infrastructure for that,
And, theoretically, all we need to do is just add an additional 30% to our infrastructure.
which is huge when we're talking about the massive size of the infrastructure already.
Yes. And not to mention, all the work that has to go into it, all the resources, and the redundancies that you have to design into it.
Yep.
Like, this is not just, this is one thing that you have to look at the argument
Yep.
and, understand both sides.
Yep.
Because I've been in many debates with a lot of green people, and they're like, oh, you're very anti green. No, I'm what's called a realist.
Mhm.
I look at both sides of the arguments
Oh,
and, try
absolutely.
and understand where both of them are coming from.
Yep.
Like, Alberta, I think, could be a very big on green. I have no issues about that. It's just the factor that, we can't just abandon oil and gas when we're at the stage right now where 90% of our industry is oil and gas.
Yep.
We can't just flick a switch and go into, let's say, solar panel or wind power or hydro overnight.
Mhm. It just doesn't work like
Like
that.
your typical hydro dam takes 15 years to build.
Yep.
You look at nuclear power plants; those take 20 years to build.
Yep.
And I said years.
Yep.
I'm not saying days. I'm not saying months. I'm saying years.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And as put on Real Engineering, he did actually a cost by cost analysis. Let's say a traditional coal power plant versus a nuclear power plant. Yes, nuclear, for example, is incredibly safe. But the thing is that it takes so much upfront cost before it's actually, viable. As opposed to a coal power plant, let's face it, those things can go up over a year.
Yep.
Are they efficient? Are they very dirty? Yes, I totally agree with that. But it's just a simple fact, I can build them in a year and have them starting to produce money within a year.
Mhm.
Versus your break even point for a nuclear power plant is about 10 years after it's fully built.
Yep. Yeah. It's
And I think another thing that we have to look into is, especially if we're going to be going into the industry of electric vehicles, we're probably going to have to look into power storage of some kind.
yep.
And contrary to popular belief, I don't believe Tesla's idea of lithium polymer being a good power storage.
No. No, I'm gonna have to find this one article that was reading a little while ago where they were using something different that has the same effects as lithium but is more widely used. Although they can't put it in cars because you need like a tremendous amount of heat because it's the
I know the batteries you're talking about.
yeah
It's
it's the
designed by a guy in Montreal.
oh interesting. I swore it was a guy
Yes.
down in the states, or they could be working
Real
together.
Engineering actually did an entire episode on that
Maybe
as
that's
well.
where I saw it.
Yeah.
Let me check.
But yes, I know the batteries you're talking about.
Yeah, where
Because I
it's
remember one of the things they're talking about with lithium polymers is that there's a very little viable range in which lithium is viable,
yep.
as opposed to these batteries. I have to run these batteries at about 4,000 degrees.
Yep. Whoa.
So if I'm losing 2 degrees or so, it's not going to bother me.
Yep.
And minus 40, I'm keeping these batteries at about 4,000 degrees.
Yep.
Minus 40, that's not even going to touch it.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
not to mention, they're made out of very cost-effective materials. Like I don't know. I just see that a lot more viable.
yeah.
Another option we could look into is, using water as a storage, but then we have to build dams, which, going on the other arguments of people that don't see the green, dams create a lot of high habitat destruction.
I saw another one that they would use um pulley systems with like large cement
Yeah.
things that go up and down.
Yep.
It's kind of an interesting concept for sure, where you're storing the power, it stores it up, and then it falls. Do I think it's viable? No, I think it's a very interesting or very different um, solution to a problem. Do I think it'll be the right solution? Probably not. But it's
Well, another thing I also think that's going to be pretty viable is a what they call a capacitor flywheel.
okay.
So it's actually a series of flywheels that
Okay.
can essentially store power out. Based off of the very little details I have found on the internet, there's not a whole lot.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there's not a whole lot to go off of because this is still relatively quote unquote new science on an old technology.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if it works, that's cool. Because essentially all we'll need to do is, have like a 6 foot by 6 foot round tube and, have maybe with how much is saying could be stored in that. Like, I mean, you could power an entire city street
Mhm.
just off of a couple solar panels.
Yep.
But once again, it's the factor of, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of issues going forward with electric that I think is a big issue.
I'm sure we can fix the issues, but um, we just got to get there to fix the issues first.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to another topic.
Okay.
Tech prices going up again.
So,
So, once again, raw resources are going up. And this is, of course, going to force us to pay more on the bottom line, which is a pain in the butt.
mhm.
Like with those expected price increases, your typical Threadripper CPU is going to be running at about $9,000 Canadian.
Let's hope not. 'Cause I want the next one. It's This is kind of a weird one with how everything's going right now. So I read another article a little while ago saying that it's going to kind of have a flip flop situation
Yeah,
where the demand is super 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 high, so their projections into the future are super 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 high, but one issue that we're running into right now is a supply chain issue.
yeah,
So the stuff is made, waiting to be shipped. Stuff is still being made, but the demand is still super high because the stuff hasn't finished shipping yet.
yeah,
Once everything is finished shipping, the stuff is still being manufactured at a ridiculous speed that we now don't need because everything is shipped.
yeah,
So it's going to be a flip flop on that one article. But
yeah,
I know we were talking about this last week how raw resources is going up, which is going to increase price just because of the raw materials, not supply and demand.
yeah,
So it's going to be interesting to see what actually takes place. Do I think they're going to go up? Yes, because that's kind of what happens with technology
yeah.
as it gets more expensive. But
Like, I mean, as technology gets more sophisticated every single time,
yep,
it's understandable that things are going to cost more because you're looking at how much sophistication goes into, let's say, a GPU or a CPU. your typical CPU costs around 60 to 90 billion dollars on research and development.
Yep.
This is before they've actually sold even just one.
Yep.
And this brings you to the prototype stage where you actually have one quote unquote built.
Yep.
And then it's usually about another note. I'm just tossing random numbers out there, but it's still well into the billions because AMD and Intel don't necessarily tell us exactly how much they spent on it.
Especially on R&D. Like
Yeah.
that's something that they never talk about. Like
Yes.
it would be ridiculously high, especially with the like how competitive the market is.
Well,
Um,
especially since we know right now Intel is, you know, very, very close to hovering around bankruptcy.
yep.
Based off of some of the things that we have heard, we know Intel is hovering around that.
Yep.
Even though their CPUs are still technically claiming 60% on Steam.
Yep.
The factor that Intel, which by the way is a household name, is very close to bankruptcy.
Yeah, it means that they're either pouring everything into R&D or something else is going on because they still
Yeah.
hold what 75% of the market share or something.
According to Steam, they still hold about 65% of
Well,
gamers.
65%, and that's a lot.
That's still majority of it.
That's a majority, which
Yeah.
should not go and bankrupt somebody.
Yeah.
So what is bankrupting them? Most likely R&D.
Yeah.
Um, especially when they've had so many issues trying to bring out new things and they
hmm
keep failing. And when something fails, it costs money.
It
So
costs a lot of
it
money.
can cost a lot of money. So
Oh yes. Because
it'll be
basically
very
what they've been
interesting.
doing the last 7 or so years is just basically rehashing the same product.
Yep.
And it's kind of sad to see Intel drop to that level.
Yep.
Like I
I
mean,
mean,
at least when AMD was doing their FX series processors, their bulldozer architecture,
yep.
they were at least dropping off new processors.
Hmm.
Like they were actually different processors. They weren't just the same rehashes as last year, just a slightly higher clock speed.
Yep. Like I'm really interested to see what Intel does this year because
Yeah,
just the description of the chip that they're releasing is yes, it's a 14 nanometer process, but it's built differently.
yeah,
So, and I think a lot of people don't understand that Intel's 14 now is pretty much in terms of density, and that's what they used to measure it off of. The density of the chips is almost
yeah.
identical to what AMD is. So,
Well, and that's kind of another thing that I think is really blown out of the industry.
yeah,
Like a bunch of a bunch of things that drive me nuts with the industry is there is no way to compare apples to apples
yep.
in every situation.
Did I ever send you that link that Linus did about the gigahertz and
Yep.
how you can't even like compare them, like unless it's apples, like unless it's like Intel to Intel in the same
Yeah, I
generation.
know.
Like
Yeah.
it's like okay,
Yep.
yeah, sure, Bulldozer went to 7 gigahertz. Great.
I've
Well,
actually seen somebody push Bulldozer to 12 gigahertz.
and it's like then everybody's like, okay, that could be the best gaming chip, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right? So,
So there's a bunch of different things. I don't want to get in too technical on this. I plan to actually do a video series going into the basics on how stuff are. But a CPU is made up of a bunch of different specs.
yep,
And there's not really any way to say this CPU is better in every application.
yep,
And one of the things I actually have on my CPU script is talking about how some applications are going to be better suited for Team Blue,
yep,
while other applications are going to be more suited towards Team Red.
yep,
And I specifically mention two distinct games made by the same company.
yep.
So we have Assassin's Creed, which actually favors the blue team.
Hmm.
And then you have Far Cry, which, well, it is sponsored by AMD, so go figure, is more geared towards running on AMD processors.
Yep.
You will actually get a much better frame rate running an AMD processor than you would with an Intel processor. That's just because of how the games are geared.
Yep. And I mean, it
And
comes down to which game as well, because
yeah,
some games run better on Intel and
hmm
some run better on AMD.
yeah,
Everyone's like, what are we gonna get? It's like, well, it's like six to one, half a dozen the other. Like, what what games are you playing? What kind of capacity are you running?
yeah.
If people are
But
like, I'm just gaming, it's like, okay, well, if you want to spend a little more, you can go Intel because you can see their 1% lows are actually a lot closer together than AMD's. But
once
sometimes
again,
they are lower.
it's kind of one of those things that drives me nuts when talking to computer. Because, back in the day, yes, there was a distinct difference.
Yep.
Like going back with a bulldozer architecture, yeah, the bulldozer was a pile of shit.
Yep.
I am not going to lie, that was a pile of shit. Take it from an AMD fan.
Yep.
I have pretty much always used distinctively AMD in all my computers.
Yep.
I have never personally liked Intel. I have found them to be kind of slow and sluggish and very power hungry. But that's just my own experience. I'm not saying all Intels are bad. It's just my own experience.
Hmm.
I I just had a preference for Team Red personally, or Team Green as they used to be.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, I've run Intel. I've run Intel majority of the time, and um, I've always found the opposite. Well, except the newest stuff.
yeah,
I always felt the opposite. That Intel was a lot smoother coming into it than AMD. That is just me, though.
yeah.
Keep in mind the first Intel that I built with was 2012, which was the 3770,
Yes, which was
3770K.
a
Yep,
very good generation of
which was a
processors.
great generation of processor. That one and the third, and then it's like some really good processors. But um, obviously they petered off.
Yeah,
But they made some really good processors in that time, and in that time, AMD has caught up, and that's why I'm using them now. I'm
yeah,
running the Threadripper mainly because of um, performance in professional stuff, so like in
yeah,
3D modeling and stuff like that. I need the powerhouse.
yes,
Am I
exactly.
looking at parting a Intel pure gaming setup? Yes, because um, everything that I can find, it's better. Ex- Unless you're running like the highest end AMD, then it's knocking blows. But still, there's so many things to look at. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Did you
like
see?
there's a lot of things that really dictate on how a processor goes.
Yep.
Like clock speed is just one of them.
Yep.
But what each processor can do, what each core can do with a clock tick is very different from,
The next.
yeah.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
it's amazing how complicated the explanation actually goes.
Yep. Oh,
And I agree with Linus as he puts it in that video is, talking about how you can't just simply rely on Cinebench numbers
mhm.
because Cinebench, for example, highly actually favors Intel.
Okay.
It's a test that generally favors Intel, if
Okay.
you've noticed that. If you want to be non-biased, binary or non-biased to Intel or AMD, you'll notice that Cinebench usually favors Intel.
Hmm. I've never noticed either way. So.
Yeah, I mean it's not as biased as some other applications. Blender generally favors AMD.
Yep. Yeah, I know. Me and you were talking about that the other day.
Yeah, but once again, Cinebench tests certain aspects of a processor.
Yep. And
Hey, Phantom.
hey, Phantom.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like
it's
going on
interesting.
many other things too. Like RAM is another one of those things that's kind of hard to explain to people
Yes and no. I
because
have a really good
I
write
I've
up
been
on
I
that.
have actually been calling certain companies just to get a price tag on gaming PCs
Hmm.
because doing Gamers Nexus or like would buy a bunch of computers and pit them head to head with a certain price range. I think that would be kind of cool just to kind of test out the market.
Yep.
because my friend Phantom Hunter is actually looking on getting a new laptop, and I recommend him an Asus
Hmm.
because I've never had issues with an Asus. I'm running an Asus laptop right now, so
Yep. I mean, everything I have is Asus pretty much. The
yeah.
Asus motherboard, and I got the laptop beside me as well.
My wife's computer is built with an Asus motherboard. My Omega X, which I've had for many years, until Windows decided to, kill it.
Yep.
Asus motherboard. My build before that was an Asus motherboard.
Yep.
Yeah, I freaking love Asus.
They
They've
they're
been amazing.
really really good. Although I am really excited that EVGA has popped on the AMD fan wagon. So
Yes.
really excited about that because if you want a better company than Asus, especially when it comes to returning products, it's EVGA.
I've had no problems returning products to AMD or Asus.
Or Asus. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they're like both are really good, are
Mm.
really renowned for it. You know the issue with that game called New World and how it's
Yep.
just killing GPUs.
Yep.
Yeah, EVGA is pretty much drop shipping new GPUs to people that are having these kind of issues, like
Yeah, I
without
believe Asus also has been doing that
ridiculous.
for GPUs as well.
Yeah, so it's like
Yeah.
it's just like both are renowned for customer service.
Oh yes.
So I'm
And then you
really
wonder why they're so huge.
yep. Oh, both are
And then
amazing
you wonder
companies.
why I don't really have a high affiliation with Gigabyte.
Or MSI.
Well, MSI actually has decent customer service
Fair
based
enough.
off of my own experience. The only reason why I'm kind of hating them right now is because they're forcing reviewers to give their reviews
Biasly.
benefits.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I know.
It's like,
That's
no, if I'm going to be sent a review sample and it's going to have certain issues with it, then I'm going to be critical about it.
yep, absolutely.
Like if I was shipped a PC and it came with a cracked screen, I'm not going to say the screen was perfectly working.
Yep.
Like I'm going to be honest in the review.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyways, going off the couple phone calls that I did make, HP has a tendency to always force you to go more RAM instead of a faster GPU or a better
Weird.
GPU.
And that's just a weird way to look at. Like, no.
Because I made a phone call to HP later on this week,
Yep.
and I'm like, okay, well, can I speak to an Omen salesperson? So they transfer me over to the salesperson, and he's like, so you want to build a gaming computer? Yes, but I this felt weird,
Okay.
me being a tech guy and understanding how to build computers,
Yep.
but being like, design me the perfect system for about, I think I was saying about $4,000.
That's a pretty big number as well.
Yes, I know. I just wanted to see what he would actually design me.
Yep.
So he's giving me a 1080 Ti.
What?
Yes, a 1080 Ti.
No.
Not a 3090 or 2090, a 1080 Ti.
Okay, I could understand a 2080 if you can't keep stock of your 30 series. I can understand that.
Yes.
A 1080 is 4 years old now.
He would be giving me a i9, I think it was 40, it was a couple generations back too.
What?
But he's like, "Okay, so tell you what, I'm going to give you the best gaming experience and give you 256 gigs of RAM
Why?
because that's going to give you the best possible frame rate." And I'm
No.
like, no.
No. It doesn't work that way. I keep arguing with my one friend out in the States. He is so adamant he just did it, and I kind of just like, no. He's like,
Okay,
I
so
want 64 gigs of RAM. I'm like, you don't need 64 gigs of RAM in your gaming PC.
okay, so first off, one thing about RAM that is very 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 hard to explain.
Hmm.
So, the biggest thing is latency.
Yep.
Now, certain CPUs benefit from latency. Certain CPUs benefit from latency very differently from each other.
Well, Intel and AMD, first
Yeah,
off.
like Intel, it
Huge.
doesn't affect it that much. Like you don't notice as much.
Hmm.
AMD, you can actually notice a huge change.
Yep.
Like for example, I changed out my RAM stick to a basically the exact same model, just a lower latency,
Yep.
a much higher speed,
Mhm.
and I noticed a huge performance boost.
Yep.
Like I mean, yeah, it cost me, I think it was $150, but hey, I don't mind paying that $150.
Mhm.
Like it's a 16 gig stick from Samsung versus a 16 gig stick from Samsung,
Yep. Yes.
but it performs a hell of a lot better. I just wish I can change out the GPU because that 3 gig GPU is kind of driving me nuts.
Yes.
That's why I've also been looking into GPU enclosures.
Yeah, those things are very interesting.
Yeah,
And yes.
I'm trying to find one that has Thunderbolt,
Mm.
but the only one that I've been able to find that has Thunderbolt is through Gigabyte,
Yep.
and I don't want to support those morons. I wanted to say something a bit more colorful, but I don't want to on YouTube.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I remember one client build that I did. What was it? So he booted it up, and then instantly a capacitor or a couple of capacitors actually exploded.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
and they tried to claim that I didn't know how to build computers. I'm like, excuse me, sir. Oh, you don't know how to build computers. That's why they blew up. No, everything was put together properly. It's the factor of your product.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I can send you the board if you want,
Yep.
and it did pay for extended warranty
Mhm.
from you guys. I ordered it directly off of your website,
Yep.
and they refused for almost 2 years.
Really.
Yeah, and by the way, this happened 3 separate times too, because I paid out of my own pocket for another board because I'm like, okay, well maybe that's just a faulty board.
Mhm.
No, we install it, same thing happens. It blows up, and then his board is dead.
Yeah, it sounds.
And I'm like, this is why I recommended you not to go with the Gigabyte. But he's like, it's cheaper than the Asus that you're recommending by
Mhm.
about $100.
Yep.
And I'm like, yes, but we had to spend around $600 trying to get this issue fixed.
Mhm.
And you ended up going with that Asus anyways. It would have cost you a hell of a lot cheaper if you went with the Asus originally.
It's
Like
mental.
I build computers. I've built many computers. I speak from experience.
Yep.
Personally, I've been using Asus since they've started selling to North America, which, for those of you that don't know, dates back to I think 2008.
Hmm.
Actually, my first computer was well before that. I don't even remember what I was using. Anyways, yeah. No, I don't remember what I was using.
Too long ago. Don't remember.
Way too long ago. See, my first computer was Windows 95. So, quite a long time ago.
Hmm.
Alright. Um, Last topic that I have on the docket is malware finds a new place to hide.
Yeah, and
So
the
talking about GPUs.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually not. I'm looking it up. This is not an actual new thing.
Yeah.
So there was a proof of concept that this would have been an issue back in 2015,
Yeah.
where a GPU keylogger and a Trojan were injected into the GPU.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, I can't find too much on what it actually gets, but we all know that that stuff is not good.
Yeah.
So, but still, it's a very interesting
Well, it's
conundrum.
a scary thing too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when you think about it, when you do a system reboot, this will reset your CPU, this will reset your RAM, this will reset your motherboard,
Hmm.
and generally Windows in your hard drive.
Yep.
Your GPU is left untouched.
Yeah, you'd have to I don't know what you'd do to
Because
have to clean something like that out.
yeah,
Like
like I
that's
mean that would be kind of a scary thing to put it into.
hmm especially if it got into it.
Yeah, like it's kind of still a proof of concept, but it's kind of one of those things that's scary when you think about it.
Hmm.
Just like how you can kind of also put it on some RAID controllers as well, which also doesn't get touched by a system format. Because on most RAID controllers, there's actually a board or kind of like a smart, I forget what it's called, but there's an actual control chip on it
Hmm.
to control the RAID. And this is actually unaffected by system formats.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I do also have the, tanking of Windows performance.
Hmm.
Like, Windows 11 is supposed to be tanking,
Which is
right?
which is weird because I haven't noticed that one bit.
Well, it's not supposed to be out yet, so I'm pretty sure they haven't added that into the
Oh,
update yet
that makes sense.
because it officially releases in 2 days.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So we'll see what the
and that's
update.
when it's gonna probably require the TPM upgrade.
I mean, we're gonna take a look at that, right? So.
Yeah, because that's also one thing that's gonna be putting a lot of strain on the industry is Windows requiring such high tier specs. Like, I mean, when you think about it, I I don't know if that's gonna. I don't know how that's really gonna affect the industry
I mean,
because
any new
yeah,
laptop's gonna be built in with all this stuff. So
yeah.
the
Like I
only
mean, mine actually comes with a built-in TPM as well.
exactly. So it's like it's only the
Yeah,
stuff within the past 5 years where it's like it's a hit and miss where you might not be able to get some security updates. That's pretty
yeah,
much what I've kind of gathered from any of the write-ups that I've seen.
yeah. And you
Um,
might be having some crashing issues too.
I mean, obviously, we're gonna see when the security issues go through, and when
Yeah,
more people actually get onto it. Because I mean, right now it's you have to do a kind of a loop de loop to even get the download for it.
yeah. I know. The one thing I do hate though is the way it currently is. You have to format your computer.
You don't have to.
At least it's asking me to format my laptop, and I'm like, I'll
Weird.
be losing everything.
I wonder why.
That's not gonna be good.
I did anyway because I deleted my RAID because I wanted two
Yeah.
drives instead of one. Just I was having issues with two drives.
Fuck. I wish I could kind of configure a RAID system or a RAID network server. That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean I have the network server behind me that I'm gonna hopefully set up one of these days.
Yeah.
Kind of have to be the only way to get hard drives to actually appear in Windows is to RAID them. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how that goes.
I don't get it either. Like I mean, one thing that I think would be kind of cool is when we get our office or our workshop set up,
Hmm.
is we can have like a super high end server like we were planning.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's,
I gotta add some more project ideas to the docket.
yes. Well, I sent you mine today where we take the. I never told you the whole thing, but taking the those things that make uh what's the name of the stuff that's super cold?
Nitrogen,
Nitrogen,
liquid nitrogen.
liquid nitrogen, where it makes the liquid nitrogen. I'm like, I would love to put that and attach it to the
Oh yeah,
computer. Take the
that
thing
would be
that
cool.
makes it and put it on the computer.
Hmm.
I know where to pick them up.
That would be pretty cool for sure.
That would be hilarious. It's like,
Actually,
yes,
I guess I'm kind of out of stuff to talk about for now
yes. I mean, we're at an
as far
hour,
as
so
yeah.
should be pretty good. Well, guys, thank you for
Thanks for tuning in. See
tuning
you
in.
next week.
See you next week. have a good week, guys.